knowledge that you have had access to and the amount of wonderful saints you've gotten to meet. It's just incredible. So I'm very excited to introduce you to him and have a great time. Enjoy.
Well, I'm excited, about being here this morning. I've never been to your parish before. Certainly I've been to Holy Hill on many occasions, but I've never been to your parish. Anyways, so I've been involved in a couple of different canonization causes myself, and there are a number of archivists around the world, really, that have been involved with canonization causes. As it turns out that, that's sometimes the place where documentation resides about people's lives that have been nominated for canonization, and like Marquette University is certainly one of those places. And so I've worked a few of these causes that I'm familiar with into my presentation here this morning. Okay. Oh, I see. We're in number 3, and how do I? Right. Okay, that goes forward. All right, but it's let's see. It's ahead. Okay, that's. And then, okay, I see. Okay, now I see how this technology works. It's all a little bit different. I'm also a collector of Easter eggs that are hand-painted and created by indigenous Native American artisans. So that's what you're going to see that on a few occasions. So in my mind, I envision each hand-decorated Easter egg as someone who's a potential saint, there's a canonization cause out there for that person. So Easter eggs, as you all know, symbolize the resurrection of Jesus and the promise of eternal life for us all. And with these particular eggs that were created by indigenous artisans from Mexico, Texas, and New Mexico. And the church teaches that all Christians who reach heaven are saints within the communion of saints, whether or not they've been counted among the over 10,000 who have been formally recognized over the past 2 millennia. Let's see, whether they've been, millennia, whether they've been honored through local popular acclamation or canonization, and that developed later in the church. Either way, honoring the faithfully departed inspired the faithful to live virtuous lives and encouraged the faithful to seek appropriate intercessors when praying for special needs and intentions. Oh. Well, oh. Okay, that's the picture I want. Jesus' mother Mary and Saint Stephen were 2 of Jesus' first followers and earliest saints in the church. Typically a quiet observer, Mary spoke up and prompted her son's intervention during the long and crucial wine-short wedding feast at Cana in Galilee, where apparently the bride was their relative. That's according to research by Bishop Fulton Sheen. And this gave the apostles the first glimpse of Jesus' divine power. And throughout history, church leaders made key pronouncements about Mary's status. In 431, at the Ecumenical Council of Ephesus, they proclaimed Mary, the Mother of God, and the divine maternity of Mary, with absolute holiness and the incapability to sin. And in 1950, Pope Pius XII proclaimed the dogma of St. Mary's ascension into heaven, which many have long believed. And after Jesus' ascension into heaven, around 33 AD, the Christian community in Jerusalem served its widows and indigent families with a daily distribution of food. And while most spoke Aramaic and Hebrew, a few spoke only Greek, with several believing that they experienced discrimination. So the apostles appointed 7 supervising deacons, with St. Stephen among them. Simultaneously, he promoted Jesus' message of salvation in the synagogues by quoting scripture and debating his challengers. This angered several Jews, which prompted charges of blasphemy, a trial, conviction, and death by stoning under the Sanhedrin, the same Jewish court that caused Jesus' demise. And since then, Christians everywhere have celebrated St. Stephen's feast and carried his name forward with names, versions of the name such as Esteban, Stephanie, or Stevenson. Well, as Christianity grew, canonization with protocols and ceremonies replaced popular acclamation as councils and popes formalized, standardized, reformed, and added more details. With exceptional reforms made by Pope Sixtus V and Pope Benedict XIV and Pope Francis. In 1588, Sixtus formed the Congregation of Rites, the first papal congregation with broad authority to examine candidates' heroic virtues of faith, hope, and charity. Because occasional discrepancies and abuses marred the canonization process, and this led to broad agreement that the papacy should add rigor and exercise more leadership over canonizations, which in 1743 proclaimed Benedict XIV to introduce, or prompted Benedict XIV to introduce medical experts to certify alleged miracles as medically inexplicable according to current medical knowledge. In 2014, Pope Francis renamed the congregation as the Dicastery for the Causes of Saints to highlight his reforms to end financial hardships or handicaps borne by the poorest and the most marginalized dioceses and other organizations around the world where there are many causes are situated and the church is growing the fastest. Because Francis saw the conventional framework hindering the causes that highlight his concerns in particular of community service, social justice, and youth engagement. And so he introduced papal decrees to authorize specific canonizations or to waive specific canonization steps. So the papal decrees that he authorized then waived these certain steps and has resulted in authorizing 942 canonizations across cultures and throughout history, which has made him the most prolific canonizer in modern history. In the early church, sainthood causes began by local people recognizing the holiness of fellow Christians, and when they passed, they were acclaimed a saint in heaven by popular acclamation, which the local bishop affirmed. And then later, after complex protocols developed, the local bishop or the head of a religious institute or order that had standing in the church that had agreed to sponsor a canonization cause, they then would petition the appropriate Vatican congregation. And so then this would entail the authentication of alleged miracles and required the compilation of the candidate's heroic virtues of faith, hope, and charity, and the writing of a positio, or specialized biography, which highlighted the candidate's holiness. Then throughout the process, candidates acquired titles that denoted their specific status. So first, when a cause is established, the candidate would be known as servant of God, which acknowledges that Rome has accepted the review of their cause for canonization. Next, they can be granted the title of venerable, which acknowledges that the candidate led a holy life, and thereafter the petitioner gathers and reviews the documentation of alleged miracles made possible by the canonization candidate intercessing with Jesus. Then third, they can be, this would be after typically after a first miracle has been authenticated, they can be granted the term blessed, which confirms the authentication of one such miracle, which is waived whenever a candidate has been declared a martyr who has died for the faith. And then lastly, in most situations, a second miracle is required, and when that has been authenticated, then the person will be declared a saint. The exception being if a person had previously been declared a martyr, then only one authenticated miracle would be required. Okay, in the Western Hemisphere, the first saints emerged in Mexico within 10 years after its conquest for Spain under Hernan Cortez in 1519 to 1521. And the first missionaries in Mexico were Franciscans. In December 1531, an apparition of Our Lady of Guadalupe appeared 4 times to a convert now known as Saint Juan Diego. And so Our Lady spoke Nahua, the Aztec language, and wore royal Aztec garb. And she imprinted her image on his cloak, as is what you're seeing in the front of this picture here. For the indigenous people, this became Mary's welcoming sign as their intercessor who stood by their side, which prompted millions to seek baptism. Then Pope Leo XIII granted a canonical decree for the image's coronization in 1887, which the Archbishop of Mexico City then executed in 1895. In turn, Pope John Paul II canonized Juan Diego in 2002, as the Western Hemisphere's first indigenous saint amid thousands of indigenous representatives from Mexico who went to Rome. Meanwhile, before Our Lady of Guadalupe, there was some indigenous people who resisted Christianity as a cultural threat. A few years before, her apparitions in a city about 50 miles or so from Mexico City is another city called Tlaxcala. And in Tlaxcala, there were 3 teenage Christian boys who were martyred for their faith by local adults one by one, because after their baptism, they openly rejected Aztec traditions, and whereas the boys were very enthusiastic and they chose to follow Christian ways. In 2017, Pope Francis canonized these indigenous boys as Saint Cristobal, or San Cristobal, San Antonio, and Saint Juan. In general, collectively, they're known as the Tlaxcala Child Martyrs, who likewise rank among the Western Hemisphere's first indigenous saints. And today, about 2/3 of all the people in the Western Hemisphere, over 1 billion people, identify as Catholic, with 100 million in Mexico. That's, I believe, about 10% of the, no, that's not right. 10% of all of them then live in Mexico, where the Guadalupe emblem endures as an important symbol of Mexican identity. All right. During the 17th and 18th century, evangelization by Jesuits and others occurred in eastern French Canada and in the New York borderlands, the Mississippi Valley, and in the Spanish La Florida, which is the area that's today the state of Florida and adjacent states, which resulted in martyrdom for scores of missionaries and indigenous converts. In 1930, Pope Pius XI canonized 8 North American Jesuit martyrs from eastern Canada and in the New York State borderlands. And these, those that were martyred in New York State were St. Isaac Jogues, St. Rene Gopal, and St. Jean de Lalande. Since then, a review of archival evidence at different archives throughout the United States and in the Caribbean, much of it in Cuba, because Cuba was where the headquarters was located for it's in the Spanish Empire, where they was with the capital of the Spanish Empire was located, and all of their archival repositories where they kept their records to this day is still in Cuba. So in researching many saints' causes from this early era, people have to go to Cuba today, and it's all written like in the original Old Spanish. That would be like the Spanish equivalent if you were like speaking Elizabethan English, you know, for like Old English, for, you know, languages change over time. And so there's a lot of challenges in coming up with documentation for old canonization causes. Then in 1988 and 2015, Pope John Paul II and Pope Francis, respectively, canonized two notable organizers of missions in schools. Saint Junipero Serra of California, he was the one Franciscan who was probably did the most for founding the California missions that many people, many tourists today go visit. And then Saint Rose Philippe Duchesne of Missouri and Kansas, who also created missions and schools in Missouri and Kansas. Yeah, Junipero Serra is on the left, and St. Rose Philippe Duchesne is the one in the top center. Some of the others who have been nominated, but they're, again, they're causes that have not progressed. Well, let's see, no, in the upper left, that is St. Isaac Jogues, but in the middle, there's another person there, Joseph, a long name I can't pronounce. He was a Huron Indian, who was considered to be the founder of the Catholic Church in Canada. Down below, Father Marquette, who is, everybody knows from your history books, one of the discoverers of the Mississippi River, but primarily a missionary, and there has been a cause established for him. I don't believe that has gotten beyond servant of God. And in the lower left is the La Florida Martyrs, which is like nearly 100 people, priests and indigenous people, they've been declared martyrs, and they're at the the second level, the venerable level. We talk about the Jesuit martyrs. One of the things is the blood of martyrs leads to additional canonization causes. Saint Catherine Tekakwitha was born at the same Mohawk Indian village where the Jesuits had been martyred, and she was nominated for canonization in 1900 at the same time that the Jesuits were, but she was being, when you're not a martyr yourself, she was separated from that cause, and it was like put in limbo for many years and then restarted many years later. Then, in 2006, looking at there's the top photo there, at the Lummi Nation Longhouse on the Puget Sound. This would be north of Seattle on the Puget Sound, Washington. The Archbishop of Seattle introduced, there's a young boy there, kindergartner in the center, but he's also a Lummi Indian. His name is Jacob Finkbonner. That's Jacob right there. And his pastor is right there holding him. There was what they call a National Tekakwitha Conference that was held there. That is a national organization of Native American Catholics. And they'd gathered there. And they were named after then Blessed Catherine Tekakwitha, who was a 17th century Mohawk woman who had survived childhood smallpox, then had lifelong eye damage. Jake also, he had survived an extreme life-threatening disease, which was a strep A infection, and he had he had eyesight problems as well from his disease. And they believe that he had a miraculous cure caused by Blessed Catherine's intercession. And at the time that this was taken in 2006, the Vatican medical experts then were investigating that alleged miracle. That February in 2006, Jake had fallen and cut a lip while he was playing basketball. And this caused his face to swell up with infection, which was a strep A infection, and it required hospitalization at the Children's Hospital of Seattle. And then despite the medical team's efforts, the disease exploded across his upper body, gnawed at his eyes and his head, and threatened his life. And it was at that time his pastor introduced intercessory prayers to Blessed Cattery, and soon after, a relative of Jake's invited a Sister Cattery Mitchell, who was the director of the Tekakwitha Conference, to visit and pray at Jake's bedside. Meanwhile, before Jake's fateful basketball game, the Tekakwitha Conference scheduled its July annual meeting in Seattle, and soon after, Sister Cattery planned to finalize the details in person. But in that morning, she first visited Jake's bedside while he laid in a medically induced coma, swathed in bandages. And with his mother, she prayed Blessed Cattery's canonization prayer while simultaneously pressing Blessed Cattery's encased relic against his body. Then moments later, his medical team whisked him away and changed his bandages. They examined his body, and in previous days, they had surgically attempted to slow the disease's progression. But on that morning, for the first time, and without signs of remission on the previous day, they found him to be disease-free, without a medical explanation, according to the doctor's written testimony submitted to the Vatican. Later, Pope Benedict XVI concluded that the medical team's findings of Jake's medically unexplained lack of disease, in tandem with testimony by Sister Cattery, Jake's parents, and others, demonstrated a miracle by Jesus prompted by St. Cattery's intercession. Then 4 years later, Benedict led her canonization ceremonies in St. Peter's Plaza on Sunday, October 21st, 2012, with Jake, his family, and Sister Cattery participating amid thousands of indigenous spectators. Okay, then below, there's a picture of Jake and Sister Cattery in the lower left. Participated in National Tekakwitha Conference ceremonies held the next July at the National Shrine of Our Lady of Martyrs in Orisville, New York, which is near the site of Assernanan, which in the 17th century, that was a Mohawk village with a French Jesuit mission. That's in upstate New York, where St. Cattery was born and 3 Jesuits were martyred. Then to the right, you see there's a painting of St. Cattery that was created by an artist from first-hand recollections of her. And then beyond that, you see there's another picture there of, those are Mohawk women around a shrine of St. Cattery. At that shrine. And up above, you see those are 3 crosses that are outside. Those represent the 3 martyred Jesuits. Okay, so now in his 20s, Jake has graduated from college. While he continues to give thanks in prayer and reflect on his parents' enduring commitment to faith and prayer with the tenacity to never give up. He's in his 20s right now. During the 18th to the 20th centuries, several courageous Americans championed the less fortunate for the greater good. In 1977, Pope Paul VI canonized Bishop John Nepomuceno Newman, who had established Catholic diocesan schools across Pennsylvania. And in 2000, so he's on the lower left, or lower right there, the large picture there, it's black and white. And let's see, Pope Paul II then canonized Catherine Drexel. She's on the left here, the colored picture in the religious habit, who had developed many missions and schools among indigenous and black Americans. And many of these people then that formed the Sisters of the Blessed Sacrament, this was all bankrolled by her personal funds because she was, well, from the Drexel family of Philadelphia, which was one of the wealthiest families of Philadelphia. So she bankrolled that religious order with her money, with the missions to Native American and black children. Other Catholic activists whose canonization causes have been started, there's several in the United States here. Nicholas Black Elk from South Dakota, on the far left. Thea Bauman of Mississippi, who was the top center there. And she joined a religious community in La Crosse, Wisconsin, Franciscan Sisters of... It's a long name. Now can't recall it right now, but anyways, Sister Thea Bowman, and then Dorothy Day in the upper right-hand corner, whose personal papers are at Marquette University as well. She was from New York City. Mary Elizabeth Lang to the right, and of Sister Thea Bowman is Mary Elizabeth Lang. She was from Baltimore and founded the first religious community of African American women. Augustus Tolton, the sepia brown tone photo of a priest in the lower center, from Chicago. And to the right there, Pierre Toussaint, originally from Haiti, a bilingual French-English-speaking person in New York City, became a famous hairdresser. Also, the person who initiated the fundraising for the St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City. That is really due more to him than anyone else. And today he is the only layperson who he's entombed in St. Patrick's Cathedral, in the same part of the cathedral that's reserved for priests and bishops, because St. Patrick's Cathedral would not exist had it not be for Pierre Toussaint. So many of these people have inspired many books and documentaries that are out there. What happened? What? I wanted my last one. There we go. Okay, and lastly, one who was recently canonized, Carlos Acutis. Carlos Acutis is a Gen Z person, died in 2006 at age 15 from leukemia. a very religious individual who aspired to become a priest, but yet he was born to a Catholic family where neither of his parents were practicing Catholics, but he himself decided he wanted to become a priest at a young age. He was very devoted to the Eucharist. In effect, he converted his parents, and their family servants were Hindu, and they became Catholic because of Carlos Hubertus. He was just such an inspirational young man. So he was a computer nerd kind of a person, and developed some creative religious education materials on his computer that are available out there about the Eucharist. He was passionate about the Eucharist, and there's materials out there on the internet about the canonization of saints that pertain to the Eucharist. So he was the first saint canonized by Pope Leo. And he's been called the first gamer saint and the patron saint of internet users. And one of his sayings is, "Everyone is born as an original, but many die as photocopies." He's been very passionate about that we should all, follow our hearts and not just be copies. Okay, so that's the end of my formal comments, and I wanted to open this up then to questions and answers. Whatever. Yes, Jeff.
I was at the chapter presentation, and this is not about the Nicholas Blackout. Can you tell us about your experience in Vatican Square that really began the canonization after the Blackout, where you were sitting next to his uncle, was it?
Okay, yeah. When I was in Rome, I was a little reluctant to go to St. Caterine's canonization, but the person who was the vice postulator in the last stages, I also happened to be his archivist, the keeper of his records. And he was a very persuasive person you could never say no to. So my wife and I, we went, and because I've been on an international church archives committee that met at different cities around the world, including Rome, over the years, I knew that Rome is a crazy city, so we got our seats very early. So we got our seats there in the plaza in front of St. Peter's, around the big obelisk, and we sat. I know it was right about at the 5 o'clock position in all the many seats that were there. This would be my wife and myself, and we were seated there not more than about just a minute, and all of a sudden here comes a man all alone. He must have been about 80 years old. He's very elderly and kind of tottery, dark-complected person. And he came and sat down next to us. He had no idea who in the world he was, and I'm curious, why in the world would he come sit next to us? There's, lots of seats there, but randomly, that was the seat that he picked. And I knew right away that in his first comment he made, he started telling me about a photo of his grandfather teaching his mother how to pray the rosary. And that spooked me right away because I knew exactly what photograph he was talking about. Here we were halfway around the world, and we had this photo on our website at Marquette University. So I knew that his grandfather had to be someone known as Nicholas Black Elk. Back in 1930, there was a book that came out called Black Elk Speaks. That was his grandfather. And as it turned out, he was the eldest grandson of Nicholas Black Elk. And I didn't know this at the time, but his name was George Looks Twice. Later, when I learned that, well, I had heard of his name, and there's people that had said to me more than once, "Oh, you need to meet George Looks Twice," and well, it just never happened. But lo and behold, here he was. This was George Looks Twice sitting next to me, and then in his next sentence, he says, "I hope that someday my grandfather is canonized too." And he had no idea, here we were like halfway around the world, but at Marquette University, the bulk of all the documentation about the Catholic dimension of his grandfather's life was at Marquette, and I was the guy that was in charge of it. And so here we were, kind of brought together by the Holy Spirit. Then as it started to fill in, there were other people that I recognized that were like, say, within eyesight, maybe 50 feet away in the crowd. And, it was just amazing the way we came together that day. I mean, later on, yes, I became, fairly good friends with George, and we started a petition drive for his grandfather's canonization, and it took about a year, and then we had about 1,600 signatures, and that was presented to the Bishop of Rapid City, and he decided to start a canonization cause for Nicholas Black Elk. That went to the U.S. Bishops' Conference, where they unanimously approved of that. Then it went to Rome. They did start a cause, and he's now to the point where he's on to the second step of venerable. And in reflecting on it, it's just, just amazing how seemingly random and day-to-day activities, how things happen and mature. There was no magical Cecil B. DeMille kind of a drama there, but just the way things came together, like when you shuffle the cards and everything came out perfect. And so that's the way it's been moving along. And it's continuing to move along. I know several people now who've been praying to Nicholas Black Elk, and there are a number of potential miracles out there that are being studied. And so that's kind of where it's at right now. Yes?
I was very fortunate, knowing Jeff, I was very fortunate. I did not go to your presentation that he did in the Menominee Falls, but I did watch the hour-long documentary, and actually want to watch it again. And I know you didn't have enough time to show it here, but are you able to give people the link and how to watch that? Because it is very worthy of watching that documentary that you were part of.
Well, it is on YouTube, okay, but you can go to the, if you Google Black Elk, Diocese of Rapid City, and then Black Elk, it would take you to the right page on the diocese website right away, and you should be able to find the link and to be able to download it there. So that should work.
That's how I was able to find it actually through the Diocese of Rapid City.
Okay.
And actually, if you just go to the Diocese of Rapid City, there's a link there to watch it, and it's very worthy to watch.
Good.
Having grown up in South Dakota, eastern South Dakota, but been out to the Black Hills many times and toured, and of course, I know it's not referenced in there, but years ago, we picked up the book, many years ago, Black Elk Speaks. So, but I was so thrilled. And then St. Kateri, we have a Kateri, young Kateri here in our parish.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought it was so wonderful to hear all of this. Thank you.
Yeah, well, you're welcome. And there are subsequent, great biographies of Black Elk that have been written, and I would say if, there's the ones that I would recommend, anything by Michael Steltenkamp. He himself is a Jesuit who did know one of Black Elk's granddaughters when he was at Red Cloud Indian School as a teacher, when he was before he was ordained, he was teaching at Red Cloud School, and that's Black Alcoholic Man of the Oglalas. That's one. And there was the second one that he wrote as well. Medicine, Mystic, and there's 3 words there: medicine, man, mystic, and something else. I'm forgetting the third one. Well, anyway, I bet that's, that's almost enough. I think you Google that much, it's going to bounce, it's going to pop up. Yes?
Question. So you said that there are, for all of these people that are in the process of getting to sainthood and need miracles, what is the process for reviewing those miracles? So you said, in the case of this person, there's several miracles under review. Like, who reviews those? How do they get to the review person?
Ultimately, the documentation of an alleged miracle goes to the congregation in Rome, and they make their judgment. Well, they may send out investigators to find out more than what's just written down. If they think that, this is, everything in there is very promising, they want to know more, they might just, there are times I've gotten, say, emails from the Vatican. It's amazing. It's seems kind of amazing. You say, oh, I got an email from the Vatican. Well, I have. But if they have a minor question, then they might just do that, or they will, in fact, send out investigators in person to find out more details than what is written down. Like, they send out, doctors who have been involved with alleged miracles. They scrutinize what they've written down, and they may interview them for more information. They're very serious and very methodical, and really, go to the utmost as far as, wanting to be certain about what they're looking for. It's it's whomever is typically it's a diocese that'll be in charge of the cause. Not always, there are exceptions. Like, for example, religious orders might, there might be someone in their community that's, they have a canonization cause. So it may be that the religious community themselves could sponsor the canonization, but most cases are a diocese. Okay.
We are praying now for the canonization of Blessed Marie Eugene, and he's up on the mural there, just above to us. That's Marie Eugene.
And where did he live?
He's a
Carmelite, but not in Milwaukee though, is he? I
really don't know where.
Okay.
He had visited the Boyle in the 1950s.
So his cause is probably whatever his home diocese? Or through the Carmelite order? Okay. Yeah, so that's pretty typical that religious communities such as the Carmelites, that they have standing where they can sponsor their own, and good.
Nicholas Blackwell, Medicine Man, Missionary, Mystic, by Michael F. Stoltenkamp. Is that the one?
Yes, those are the ones. Yeah, those are the ones that I would recommend the most. Yeah. I've worked with him personally. He's a fantastic person. fact, I've helped him on a few of in his research stage. I was one of the persons that helped him with a few details, yeah. Yes, sir.
Walking the Good Red Road. So make sure there's like 5 or 6 of them. Documentaries.
Were there 6 parts to it? Is that what-
No, there's one for 58 minutes, which is the one I just mentioned. But if you Google his name, there's like 4 or 5 documentaries that come up. So it's a little one.
The one that I watched, I think, from the diocese was just shy of an hour.
Yeah, that's the one from the diocese, because it says it's sponsored by the diocese.
Right, that's was produced through, I believe it's a Franciscan group out of Ohio, yeah.
Media, and they're
Right.
It really is a worthy watch.
Yeah, that had an involvement with a lot of, local indigenous people, so that, yeah,
Really well done.
I felt really good about it. People whose families, knew black elk. So it,
That's interesting because he's a traditional healer
yes.
and a Catholic missionary. I mean, it's just kind of,
He was incredibly unique in the way that he was very comfortable walking both roads, being Catholic and being a native healer at the same time. There are many people out there that are not, but he was. Yes, ma'am.
Do the miracles, like I had a granddaughter that had neuroblastoma, and they really everyone prayed to Father Salonis. But she went through treatment, and then it was cured. But they said it was really, she was on the cusp of dying from it. So how do you know it's a miracle from the prayers versus the treatment? I mean, they didn't finish all the treatment. They wanted a bone marrow transplant, and my son said, no, we think she's cured, and they took her out of the hospital, and she's fine now. So how do they determine that?
Well, I would say I know Jake's miracle fairly well. He's a fine young man, just graduated from college now. At the time of the miracle, he was in kindergarten. In his case, when he went in, when Sister Cattery Mitchell came to pray over him when he was in the coma, that day before, when his bandages were put on, the doctors said the top half from the waist up, he was totally covered in disease. Plus, his upper body, including his head and face, was quite scarred. And then after they were through praying, and this was just, instantly, as soon as the prayer was over, they whisked him away on a cart into surgery, and as fast as they could get those bandages off, they did. There was no disease, although all the scarring was still there. It's just that the disease was simply gone. There was no active disease, but all the visual remnants were still there. It's just that nothing was active anymore. So it's like, I don't know how much different that made things look, but it wasn't like, he was not like, like before things happened where everything were totally pristine. It wasn't quite that good. It was just simply the disease itself. There was no active disease. And afterwards, on his face, he had multiple surgeries cosmetic surgeries to get rid of a lot of his scarring because it was quite severe. So the thing of it is, so a miracle, to be considered a miracle, it has to not necessarily be quite instantaneous. They used this I used to hear it said that it had to be instantaneous, but now they're not quite as explicit about that, but it has to be rapid, and it has to be rapid, and there was some other word I've heard said, now I'm drawing a blank on that. Rapid, and I guess not just a remission, but it has to be, it has to be a rapid cure. Now, some of that, it requires medical professionals. Now, the Vatican maintains not just, they have a whole battery of a large committee of medical experts. So it's grown into they have a whole, and these are for the most part doctors in Rome, who are all, I believe they're volunteers, who do gather and spend a lot of time at this. So there's, modern medicine has a major role to play in it, and their job is not to say whether something is a miracle, but that it's not medically explicable. That's the key. So if they can explain it through modern medicine, then something is thrown out. It's not a miracle.
They had an opinion at 60 Minutes on that. So there was a 60 Minutes special on that. I don't know if it was associated with the Lord's episode they did, but they had a profile of that council and how it worked and all that other stuff on 60 Minutes.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, that's something I've not seen, but
Very interesting. They're pretty hardcore. They're like, this isn't like a small report. Yeah, it's like court cases this big, medically with research and everything on a lot of these claims of miracles and stuff. So this is a quick review.
there's a lot of things that do get thrown out, and there are times when things I've had people who had attachments to specific causes, and they're angry about a certain situation was thrown out, and they're saying, well, that they felt that a certain doctor on the board was biased. So there's all kinds of possibilities out there. But yes, sir.
What if it's not a medical miracle? Not everything is a medical miracle.
That's right. Not everything is a medical miracle, but medical miracles is what they prefer to focus on, because that's a situation where they can best frame what they're looking for. Is in a medical miracle, they can frame that and they know what they're focusing on. Whereas if it's other kinds of natural phenomena, I don't know what they do about it, other I know that's not what they prefer.
I can understand that.
Yeah, there's just too many possibilities out there, and they can't really focus on it, and that's what they don't like, is because they want to be able to eliminate possibilities and get down to what's medically inexplicable, and that's what they consider to be a miracle. That's the key. And if it's just natural phenomena out there, it's too big of a can of worms.
When they first started the process for blackout, how many signatures did you need?
There wasn't any specific number. We simply had 1,600, and the bishop was satisfied with that. And I was dealing with the person who was head of his religious education department, who I knew very well, and he was my liaison person, and so we knew in advance, what the bishop's feelings were based upon those judgments.
So it's up to the discretion of the individual.
Right. So, yeah, on that level, right, the bishop, he was the person to make the call.
And he
Right, yeah. And then when it comes down to authenticating miracles, I mean, ultimately, the Pope has, ultimate discretion over that. The congregation then, they make a recommendation on everything, across the board. And ultimately, then all those recommendations goes to the Pope for review, and he makes the ultimate call. And so he's got, all kinds of room for discretion. And, well, like I said, there was 900 some canonizations by Pope Francis, and some of those went back 500 years. Ones that causes that had simply gone by the wayside, and if you will, and became dormant. And ones like he felt that they were certainly relevant in today's world. Canonizing, for example, children who were martyrs, and anything dealing with like youth, service to the community, service to society. Those are all things that were very important that he thought is very relevant, is people being involved. Those kind of examples are the ones that he wants to promote, or he did, And Pope Leo, it seems, is kind of following in the same line of thinking.
And they said before the 10th century, it was just kind of the process was just like popular acclaim. Everybody was in agreement. This person is a saint.
Right. Well, you got to know in the first 500 years, the church was relatively small. People knew everybody. And so it started off with just people's first-hand knowledge of people, the person that you see every day. And people that you think live exceptional lives among you. And so it's just whom your local community felt this person was a saint. And then the local bishop would affirm that. And from my understanding, what I read is they largely went on the judgment of their people. Unless there was something really exceptional they would think differently, they went along with that. But then as the church kept getting larger and larger, there were things that came up that they felt were abuses. There's always situations where somebody's trying to create a situation of fraud or whatever. So there were some of these, fraudulent and abusive things that were kind of crept in here and there. So then, over time, church councils would make certain rules, and so gradually things became more and more rule-oriented. And then we moved into this situation where we've, had for over 1,000 years of, canonization by you have to follow all these different rules and steps, which was not bad. But then, like what Pope Francis observed, he felt that like the poor dioceses of the world were at a real disadvantage, and yet these are the areas of the world that the church is also growing the fastest. And so the canonization process was not being as inspirational to all the new people in the church that he felt it ought to be. So that's what led to his reforms. Okay, you're welcome. Well, if you have no further questions, I think I need to draw this to a close too. Like Jeff, he knows my personal situation, but my wife is home alone and she's wheelchair bound, and so I care for her. Thank you.